Perfect, and we are live.
Okay, I call to order this meeting of the Bond Oversight Committee for the City of Salem for August 27th, 2026. I'm Julie Hoy, the mayor.
I'm Councillor Mickey Varney, Ward 8.
Councillor Nishioka, Ward 2.
Bob Courtright, community member. Mike Aaron, community member.
All right. Thank you everyone for being here. Does anyone want to make a motion for approval of the July 23rd, 2026 meeting minutes?
I so move. Second. Sorry.
Any discussion on those? No, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Anyone signed up for public comment? No, ma'am. Thank you. Action items, the sidewalk infill package.
You got it. You got it.
That's okay. My name is Brandon Klukas. I'm the street maintenance operations manager for the city of Salem. And today we're going to talk about the sidewalk replacement.
Hi, Councilor Pink. No sound.
Should be better now.
Wait, that we're trying to work it out.
Kind of confusing because I share your audio and I selected that. 'Cause to me, that means you should share your audio.
Sorry, Brandon.
Sorry.
Please continue.
Continue or start over?
Maybe recap.
Recap or recapping so let me know which way to go. Recap.
Recap your beginning presentation.
Let's go back to the first slide. We
Okay.
can give a quick recap of where we're at.
Yeah, so we're talking about the sidewalk replacement bucket of there's 3 buckets: safety, the infill, pedestrian crossings. As part of this, we're going to look at you want the next slide? One We already gotten public input. We've evaluated those locations against criteria. We've developed cost estimates for those locations, and we're seeking a preliminary recommendation from the bond that supports, we're seeking approval of our preliminary recommendation to the bond committee. Criteria that we used was 45% hazard assessment, 25% equity as the primary factors for developing the priority. Proximity to schools, transit parks, and street classification were the other factors utilized. Our top candidates on the map are the ones indicated with the color scale from red to blue, with red indicating the most hazardous locations and blue the least hazardous. Areas in gray fell outside of our top 100 scoring criteria for hazard, and were not pushed through the equity lens of proximity and street classification.
May I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Do you have to take into account public right-of-way trees or management of them as you're doing the sidewalk areas?
So as part for the scoring criteria and prioritization, that wasn't a factor that we looked at. It will need to be taken into account during the actual replacement.
Thank you.
As long as you paused, for the record, since they couldn't hear, the agenda reflects that this is infill and it's not.
It's replaced.
It's replaced.
Yeah.
So thank you.
The total available in the bond to date is approximately 7.4 million. The projected, I think you can go one more. The projected delivery right now is around 7 million, so about a 95% expenditure. So that'll allow a little bit of variance. 54 unique areas were developed. Each of those areas has a subset of locations around it. Next slide. So by neighborhood association, it's showing here the impacted tax lots, the wards affected within that neighborhood association. So as an example, if I use West Salem contains wards 1 and wards 8. The reason only ward 1 is listed here is there is no locations in ward 8 as part of the neighborhood association of West Salem. So if you're looking at the neighborhood association and you question that's why that word's listed. The estimated value is for the work being performed within that neighborhood association. On the first slide here, so we've broken down a series of slides trying to hone in on different areas. Some of them have combined neighborhood associations because of their proximity. Some of the neighborhood associations because the amount of work had to be broken up in a segment. So as an example, NEN has such an amount of work that it made more sense to break it into 2 different slides. So in this instance, it's CanDo, the northern location at Commercial and Leslie on 12th Street, that's within Cessna. The southern location on Cottage is within Scan. In the Grant Neighborhood Association, there's multiple areas identified, generally in proximity to the Grant Community School. The identifier on the right, so Church and Market, would actually be that Belmont piece on the south, the Church Street side as it approaches Market, and the first line of Market up to the alley. The Cottage and Market section is the next little T that's made over there. Church and Gaines is everything up in that quadrant. Again, trying to condense information where listing by tax lots has got to be too big. So trying to find a different way to display it. The Highland Neighborhood Association is Tamarack over in the southeast. The Jefferson area by the railroad tracks to the west, by Commercial, the Rex Apartments. Commercial Street Northeast is the identified area between Columbia, Church Street, is Columbia to Highland and Church, and the southern, Maple Avenue is the area on Maple coming up to Spruce, and Locust is the north over there by the school for the deaf and blind.
Not an ADA ramp, that little symbol there.
Great question. Yes. So anywhere that there's that accessible symbol is indicating that as part of this accessibility, ADA ramp needs to be reconstructed due to some either proximity to the sidewalk repair, or it's getting into a landing or some other feature that's causing that ADA ramp to be replaced. In general, that's not the focus of this program, but there is areas where that we felt like it was going to be triggered. Northeast neighbors, this slide is indicating areas north of D Street within NEN. So a variety of locations, D Street, 16th, 15th. Another example of the breakdown here, 14th Street Northeast, as it listed for the 134, is actually just the 2 points there on 14th, whereas Nebraska Street includes the work on Nebraska Avenue as well as 14th north of Nebraska.
Okay.
Section over on Baker by Barrett Field, Grant, 19th and 23rd.
Zoom in.
This is South of D Street and Northeast neighbors, areas on Statesman, around Center Street, Thompson, 19th Street, which is the area southerly, is the 61,000. There's a 19th Street component that's nearer to Center. 20th Street is the area solely over there by Bremen and on 20th, and then the Court Street locations are split between the north side and south side. Northgate Neighborhood Association on 31st.
This is really easy to point to. This was really easy.
Yeah, Northgate may be disappointed, however, but yeah, so just one location out there. Southeast Salem Neighborhood Association. So between the neighborhood associations, just a reminder, NEN is the, out of all of them, gets the most identified areas. Cessna is number 2. Predominantly in this mill to state 23rd to 15th area, there is that outlier that sits over off of 12th that's not identified on this slide. It was on a previous slide. Sunny Slope and South Gateway, there's an isolated area in Sunny Slope over there on East Ridge, which is just north of Rock Creek. Valleywood Drive, which has a lot of tree issues. And down in the furthest point south, that's 13th Avenues. The West Salem Neighborhood Association, again, it's within the Ward 1 area of West Salem, nothing up above that lane. Most of it down in the areas, or all of it actually, over there around that Rosemont area near the park and Kingwood.
Okay.
Did I go too fast? I apologize.
No,
Okay.
Blaze Smoothies. So today what we're seeking is that preliminary approval. We have the ability to go back to some of the mapping and dive in deeper as community desires, but
Yeah, I would just add that, Brandon's work in identifying all the factors, engineering, actually mapping out what needs to be replaced and putting cost estimates to them. There was a lot of work that went into getting these top 50 before we actually looked at the top 100 or whatever. And so there's a lot behind it. This committee or parts of this committee probably a year and a half ago or more made decisions on if you're going to go in an area, don't just fix one panel and there's other panels that are in bad condition adjacent to it. So that's why you see it broken into those different areas, so that if we're going in there, we're going to make it whole and not walk away and comes in between the work that we did that's non-compliant just because it wasn't as bad as some of the others.
Yeah.
But Brandon is right. There's links to actual plans that show the detailed sidewalk that's being replaced and how we got to where we're at. So a lot of work has been done.
Good job.
Very good.
Other thoughts or questions?
I have a question. Yes, thank you. Thank you for all of that work. What I'm curious about is looking at some of these repairs. Some of them appear to be very tiny and yet kind of expensive, and then others seem larger and not quite as costly. What factors are involved in that? The preliminary work to lay it, or?
so most of these estimates, I would say, have a lot of factors in place. So there is some of the areas have a tree removal that was identified by urban
Got it.
forestry because we pulled in urban forestry. Some of them, the tree was already removed between when we initially got the request and now, so we know that it won't need supporting infrastructure or possibly movement in the spaces that would cost more money. A lot of the areas where urban forestry has noted to protect on that tree, engineering identified to add in rebar or other components to strengthen the concrete. Some of the areas may have curb disturbance or other things that need to be addressed as part of that to remain in compliance. A lot of them will not, kind of what Director Martin was saying was that there may be an issue at the sidewalk along this tree, but in order to remediate this and have any hope of retaining this tree, we need to plan for a removal that encompasses areas adjacent to that space. Cottage Street, as an example, is a location where there's a large tree. It is a property line sidewalk. And in order to navigate around that space, the decision is made to move that to a curb type sidewalk to create that space because the tree is actually on the property owner side. It allows that shift. In order to do that, now there's other components like reconstructing the driveway or maybe curb repairs that need to happen.
That answers all the questions I had about trees. All right, yeah, thank you. Then neighborhood will like this because they, every meeting, complaining about their sidewalks. This is building, but it's just like, that's all I hear. Well, not all I hear.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we don't have,
The fixing.
$200 or $300 million to tackle a lot more of the, doing what we can with the bucket that we have. And we're grateful to get that work done because, that takes away then from the other maintenance costs over doing our annual repairs with the transportation fund, which also has some challenges.
I think a lot of people don't realize, as you were just explaining, how much work goes behind all of this and the cost of that. And they just think, why can't you just go fix it, or lay out the sidewalk? Why is it so hard? So sometimes we have to explain the why.
Not so much questions, just comment. And it's first is, thank you, Brandon, it's great work. We've talked about this particular bucket many times, set the criteria in various presentations. So you're working within a lot of limitations. I think at the beginning, I think you presented that we could spend all 300 million on just sidewalks and not fix everything, right?
Yeah.
And so working with the constraints we have, I'm actually really pleased that seems to be far more projects getting done or more work spread around the city that needs to be done working under the constraints that you are than I had anticipated. So really just sort of a kudos to you and the team, not so much a question, a lot of constraints for what you're working with.
Alex. You're down.
Appreciate it, so smile today.
Thank you. I too am impressed with, wow, the coverage all over. My question is, yes, a lot of work went into this. So the projects that weren't selected and also for the future, how is this going to be used and cataloged and maybe applied to future projects?
I think that's a great question. So so we already maintain a customer request system for maintenance. And as part of this process, as information came in through those bond centered areas online or phone calls, we just added those to our initial database. And we're going to maintain that. We still prioritize against that as new revenues or resources become available. That's what we utilize. I think it's also going to be a benefit on any future bond, right? That now we have something that just keeps growing with whatever the customer needs that are identified. Criteria can change. We still have all of our initial hazard assessments, so future criteria change in how the lens we view the hazards through could be applied. So
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm a glass half empty kind of guy. I'd like to get all 200 or all of the sidewalks fixed. I'm curious if you have more information about kind of So what's the average cost? What are the things that are driving the cost of projects? Again, a couple of folks noted, look like they're really expensive, small projects. And I'm curious what's driving the cost of those. And
Is there a specific one? It might be easier to hone in on a specific location than, or maybe Alan could.
yeah, we pick an example.
I mean, a lot of things will drive, if you see an ADA ramp next to one, I mean, there's a driver, it doesn't matter the size of it, once you added that ramp is a huge component of cost. Some of the areas, just in how they're viewed here, just a reminder that, as an example, 14th Street here as it's listed, the 134 is here. That Nebraska that looks empty isn't just Nebraska, it's coming around on 14th here. And so some of that might be just how
The grouping.
the grouping from the engineering estimate and trying to give a name to what that means and not have it be confusing. But if there's a specific one,
And well, I don't know if I can pick out a specific one, but by the way, it was more of a, maybe Court Street North. Let me try that, because that's $275,000 for, looks like, one block. Out on the Craig Park.
You can link to the more detailed,
Yeah.
from these smaller sheets or is that from the bigger map?
so we can dive in a little bit more. So on Court Street North, I would immediately notice there's an ADA ramp that has to be constructed as part of that project. That's a big driver. It is coming around and wrapping. We can, if you want to click
Yeah.
here.
Let me just actually go to the window. Here we go. Can we go here? Or do you want me to click into, is it
You
easier to
can-
go the other way?
I know you're fine right here. I would just zoom out and head south or north.
No, for the estimates for these are probably packaged and procured for a contractor, correct?
Correct, yeah, that's the intent.
It's getting close, yeah.
Bid it out in packages, just so it makes sense geographically.
I think it's right here.
There's economies of scale.
Yep, you're right. Look at you.
So it's where you just click on this one.
Yes, sir.
And then I think what he wants,
The street view
no.
or the PDF?
Similarly, big bid.
Wow.
No.
Isn't that crazy?
It looks like it, but this is still preliminary. There's still more work to do to get it ready to bid.
Right, so on here, if you'll notice in this example, we have the ADA ramp being rebuilt, that's its own cost. There's 4 trees being removed, 5. One of them is probably, it looks like there may be, I don't know for sure, but maybe a factor in there might be it's a partially private. So there may be some issue there, I don't know. But a lot of work went in on that side to try to determine potential costs and make sure the estimate reflected the things that we could get into on this location. Or all of the locations, I should say, but the area in gray over there, the P means protect, so the tree's being protected. The gray indicates that that's gonna be supplemented with reinforced treatment. So rebar placed to reinforce the mat, so future growth, it can hopefully contain it. That's the answer, and we're getting.
Well, part of it gets to the review by the neighborhoods. I mean, I think everybody's gonna want more projects and wonder why that street instead of my street sort of thing. So, and then going with the bid question, are there ways that we can package to minimize or hopefully get as many feet of sidewalk as possible?
Yeah, so
On the really expensive ones, I wonder if we scratch our heads and say, is it best to spread the money onto other projects where we would get more linear feet of sidewalk? I mean, is there a next tier down?
Is this is this an extreme risk area? Like, is this the red zone?
So everything that we're looking at now is viewed in through that lens, right? Assessing risk is really hard for any location. There's areas that have a higher pedestrian count. Pedestrian counts weren't part of this. It's not a factor we can run around the city. This isn't a commercial district, but that wasn't a factor of our criteria either. If we want to view the lens and rework the lens to look at those types of things, then it's not going to have this outcome, right? These will be different places. It'll have a different focus. If expense is a threshold, then I mean that's up to the committee to determine. I mean, but based on the criteria, this was a hazardous location. It is hazardous to traverse. Is it any more risk than another area down next to the park? They're all.
Yeah.
I think when we looked at that criteria, it was as Brandon mentioned, the hazard was the highest scoring one. And so we know we're getting generally speaking, the highest hazards in the area that have the highest equity. But maybe other areas have high hazard, but there's lower equity that we may not have looked at. But we didn't draw a line and say, if you spend more than X dollars in a spot, we should look at a different spot. That would be something we could do, but it's taken a long time to get here and nobody had thought.
I mean, I want to be clear. I think we've got a good set of projects and I like the criteria that lead those to them. But I mean, given our financial situation, we're never going to rebuild all the sidewalks. Can we get one entity? And there are other probably equally deserving ones just next to you.
So in that location specifically, one thing I would identify is, if I recall correctly, there's a parade park to the north.
Yep.
As you come down 21st, that connection across the bridge on Court Street happens on that side of the street, right? So it's facilitating, even though those weren't things that were identified, this does accomplish that connection. If that has value and there is an expense to it, there's other areas on 21st, right? That the area itself is going to take a tremendous amount of investment, but it's a tremendous amount of need. And so I would just be cautious of us walking away from the needs because of in some instances, the price associated with it. When there's, from a maintenance standpoint, maintenance would have a hard time lifting this, right? So recognizing that as well, these are sometimes generationally one-time monies that this is the time that you're going to have the ability to impact a change there. And then different lens may be spreading it out, but then we're going to be walking away from these connections that we could make in the community that otherwise may not surface.
I think the criteria are good at getting us most of the way there. I mean, especially when the public process, maybe you can talk more about that, is I would trust neighborhood associations maybe to say more about, are there other priorities that you want to, in that next tier of deserving projects that you want to consider? Not have it be completely driven by the criteria, especially when it's really expensive.
Sorry, Bob, but like a cost per panel or something be interesting just by project?
I think that would be helpful if you've got the 10% of projects that are much more expensive than the others.
I think this one appears to have less swing than when we were looking at when we were looking at infill. There were some areas where it was just like you could spend the whole bucket in this one spot just because it required so much investment. This one looks like it's a few smaller things driving it, like trees or ADA ramps. There's quite a bit less variation than there was for the infill area. But I think that could be an interesting metric to see if there's a couple that are higher up there, and what would happen if you dropped those off and grabbed. So what would you do below that line?
Could I ask a clarifying question? As we develop a cost per panel, we would include all of the adjacent costs associated to create that work. So in this instance, if we, using this example, we would roll in the ADA, all driveway
You do a
treatment.
linear foot cost.
So it's a linear foot cost of the sidewalk, and it's including all of the extra treatments and then changing. Okay.
I guess the other thing I would share is Brandon's team has been doing about $3 million worth of sidewalk repairs a year already. So outside of this process, he has his hazard assessment. The criteria is not exactly the same, and we decided to keep the maintenance element separate. So there is other work that's happening that's taking care of some of that lower hanging fruit that spreads the money through another method. So that is out there too, in addition to this.
I wonder if what we're talking about is how the public engagement on this recommendation occurs and what the primary messages are that we're conveying. Like this, I think that's a really useful point. This is not intended to replace, there's still this ongoing maintenance work. We're just giving a thank you for the gift of being able to advance some of these situations that are so hard and expensive faster than we could do at a different, with this existing funding source. And maybe we just need to get more into how this is different and how we've been weighing these projects in a different way. Brandon, our team can help with the messaging when we get ready.
As part of our public outreach, we did anticipate going to each neighborhood association with what was being proposed within that neighborhood association. So I would anticipate when I go there, difficult conversations. I've had difficult conversations there before. It's nothing new. It's a contentious issue. There is never enough, right? And so I would just put out there that no matter what you decide and how to approach this animal, there's somebody that is left out and will be upset, right? So it's just the reality of this situation. It's an underfunded asset and it has been under-maintained for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I chose deliberately not to say, well, Ward 6 didn't even get anything. Right,
But not to express that there is a need there.
Sure.
They just didn't, through this lens, it's not being filled.
And just because it's expensive doesn't mean it isn't necessary.
Right.
Or needed.
Thank you. Again, to your messaging, Courtney, I feel that it would be very important when you go out to the neighborhood associations, let the counselors know that you're coming. That way they might be able to be there for support. But I think what we need to do is make sure that we have a good explanation of that message is delivered, because even if it is clear and on task, there still will be frustration. Why didn't you do this? So I think that the message really needs to be delivered with not only with the criteria, but a very strong message of why these areas were chosen and the funding that we have available.
And the regular maintenance work that you're doing is not ended. That will continue, and there is a way to let us know about a problem that you experience every day. So this doesn't shut any doors for further maintenance. It just is advancing a series of priorities with the special money.
I also know many will be very happy that you're there and that you're talking about them. They're going to be happy.
So
You need a motion on this? I see.
what was the,
That'd be helpful.
I don't know that we got to the next step slide.
Let me get there. Let's get to next
through it.
steps.
Yeah.
Find it. Next steps. There we go.
there was
Play.
committee approval of preliminary recommendation.
Oh, gosh darn it. All with you people. I'm sorry.
I don't want to start.
There we go. Yeah, I know you don't. Okay, there we go. A third time. There's the charm, right? No, yeah, there we go.
That, is that a motion? Or is that just a thumbs up?
I think that first one would be
Would be committee approval of preliminary recommendation.
So I move that we approve the preliminary recommendations.
I'll second.
Okay, any more discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none? Thank you.
Thank you. It's a clarifying
Mm-hmm.
question. So there was Bob had that request for the panel
Linear.
or linear costs or something.
Yeah, is it okay if we bring that back after the public outreach, when they come back with the final recommendation with the outreach included?
Well, maybe you could say more about what you're gonna do in terms of public input. I mean, again, what I would think if I were on a neighborhood association, I'd say, gee,
Why can't you?
well, here are ones that I think should be considered. Is there a way for a neighborhood association to say, gee, we agree with 8 of the 10 recommendations you're making, but we would substitute these two, or think these should be considered higher priority, just from a neighborhood perspective.
So my intent on the neighborhood outreach was to bring, it's a little bit easier there because you can get a little more granular. So bringing locations that are in reduced format,
Right.
specific to that neighborhood association, which would allow more granular conversation on some of those other points. They're gonna have more knowledge about their neighborhood association than probably any other group we're gonna talk to. If they had other inputs, we could bring that back to this was Ben's recommendation, right? They accepted it as it was, or Ben decided, hey, I don't like this at all. Brandon, you're an idiot. And here's the locations we want done instead, right? That's ultimately would be the committee's decision then on whether that was the direction we went or not, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think when we had the infield, when we went back out to the neighborhood associations, if I'm not mistaken,
It was
there was
Nesca.
there was one of them they didn't want.
They said, we don't want a sidewalk here,
Right.
but it was partly because they would lose some of their, front yard.
Right.
And so, trust me, there won't be any reservation for people to ask whether or not it would be the right thing, could be reevaluated.
I was just thinking the cost information might be helpful for neighborhoods to understand and look at what we're doing.
Right. I think one of the challenging aspects of this, just from my viewpoint, will be as we approach neighborhood associations like SCAN or Can Do, these areas that have one location or no locations, they will readily identify 50 locations that are, if they go look at locations being done in these areas, are not as hazardous, right? These locations being proposed aren't as hazardous because the lens we're viewing them in is 55%, not based on hazard, right? It's based off of other criteria that then reduces how hazards are impacting that decision, right? You can always find someplace worse especially if you're viewing it through a lens to proximity to something or what somebody's socioeconomic status is, right? I'm not saying those lenses are good, but they're gonna change that. So then as these neighborhoods are reached out, there will be contention. I can show you something more hazardous. Why aren't you doing this one? Why aren't you doing these 8? So I think that's a conversation as we open those doors to be prepared for.
Yeah. And
When you start with the scoring, are you gonna talk about the scoring?
Yes,
At the-
yeah. Everything presented here, then, but getting more granular.
What's the
Within-
purpose of the engagement?
What?
What's the purpose of the engagement?
I would suggest the purpose of the engagement with them is to get their feedback, buy-in, and areas that we haven't thought of. Right, but be prepared for the conversation.
Well, then part of the conversation is we have our operational funds where we do sidewalk repairs as well. So they may point out things that we can take care of,
Look at.
look at. The other bucket of money. Or maybe it'll move up higher on your other list.
The essential question I'm trying to get to is, if you're talking to a neighborhood association, is we've used the criteria, these come out as the top priorities in your neighborhood based on our criteria. Do you agree with, or are there other projects that we ought to be advancing? Not to say you get more money,
No,
but
it's
are
not
these the
even
right
that,
set
but
of projects?
I think that it can, I think again, what would have to happen is making sure that you stay on target, that this is, replacement scoring.
Right.
And criteria, and even though we may have the linear feet, if you say, well, if that doesn't work for you, this is the other option, because if you open up the door saying where they want it, then it becomes more difficult to structure it. I understand what you're saying. You're trying to find what that area wants for the money that's available.
I wouldn't be completely open-ended about it. Again, I think we said that there were 100 projects initially identified, right?
Well, there were more than 100. We
Just look at-
there's
look at
the
the
pricing.
Looked at the
of
top
100.
100, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So they already have had input. So there has
They
been
have.
input that went into this original evaluation.
There's right now 2,200 individual requests for sidewalk replacement. Of those 2,200, we took the top 100 locations and then informed that into this, and then realized quickly that it wasn't gonna get there, so reduced down. And then we have 54 unique locations now that we're hitting those segments on.
And I think, again, one of the strong points one needs to make is that we're doing it really the right way so that it lasts longer. I mean, you're like trying to say that this is what we're doing because you're managing the trees or you're going around a property line so that you can build the best and it will last. You know, I think those are all of the things that need to be sort of emphasized.
Yeah, and I think engineering has done a tremendous job of creating estimates that reflect the conditions that are gonna be in cities. Right, and so a lot of the other things that couldn't be found there, that they've added that into the estimate. A lot of work has gone
Yeah,
into
the
that.
gap we have right now is we got all the requests. They don't know what we've done with those requests.
Right.
And so this is going back to them and saying, we heard your request.
And here it is.
Here's the criteria used.
The discrete challenge is that the equity score is a macro
Yes.
conversation and the project is a micro conversation. And so it's challenging to invite participation on both of those
Yes.
lenses at the same time. So I think the way, you know, we can have more conversation about the best way to do that, but I think for inviting input on the discrete project, this is the project that we're proposing. That's gonna maybe be the best way, and then other ideas can be funneled back through into the crowdsourcing that you guys have been doing forever about project needs.
Yeah. And if it were me and I was showing up at the meeting, I would have a slide that shows the process you've been through, the work that's already gone into coming to this place.
Yeah, it'll be a brand new conversation for many of the people.
Yes.
Can I
Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to ask is that following that, so there were the requests, took the top scoring 100, and then how were those narrowed down after that?
We took the 100 most hazardous and then narrowed it through that lens.
Okay.
What's the lens? So
Okay.
proximity,
Street.
equity,
Sure.
street classification. And then that priority scoring that was established. There was a couple things that came out from the committee's recommendation previously.
Okay.
An example of that was on Fee Street at Front. There was an area that, an initial that estimated was, kind of going to Bob's statement earlier, it was about $1 million, I think, for one location. And that's an area that was identified as being within an urban renewal area, so didn't think it was a wise use of this street.
This dollars, yeah.
Yeah. There was a location that had already been repaired, and so it was removed, a couple of them, in fact. So then those were taken out, and then we just went down from top to bottom, till the money ran out.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was-
I think the really good news, and we've already talked about is, when we start talking about the next bond, we're gonna have a really good base of work to start from.
Yes.
When this program was developed as a bucket, it was very challenging. That's why it was a bucket, and we didn't have this kind of pre-work identified. So, I mean, one of the nice things, and if they talk about is like, hey, what's gonna happen with these is they're gonna get prioritized into the next bond program or the regular maintenance schedule. So it's not, because you requested it, doesn't mean it goes away.
Right.
I think that's a really good thing to say for the next bond.
Without your rate going up.
Without your rate going up. See if we can even have it the same or less. Who knows? Probably not less, but the same. A lot of work. Thank you. I know that Cessna and Nesca and Nin will be happy to hear that these projects are potentially coming forward. Anything further on that topic?
Thank you.
Anyone?
Thank you so much. Really.
Good job,
Brandon.
Yes.
You just like laid back.
He says, oh my God, like, I want out of here. I want out of here.
I'll stay.
Okay, then, did we get that vote? Yeah, okay, I just wanted to make
We
sure.
have no new items, management update information items, enterprise resource planning.
Yes.
Group.
Yeah, I forgot that was the
Wyatt.
acronym here. Enterprise resource planning, so if you're not familiar with what that is, it's kind of a backbone system of the city, so accounts payable, accounts receivable, payroll, HR, all those different information systems that we use. Our current software we've been using is an Oracle-based software. It was implemented in 1999. 97. The date in there only goes back to 99. So including this one was replacement of that software. Staff have been doing a really great job working through that, and we're almost at the tail end. We're implementing, I think it's September 21st. Staff have access to the system and are using the payroll part of it, and then October 1st for financials. So just here at the very end, if you ask staff, there will be a lot of anxiety and apprehension, but some of us are hopeful and excited. As part of the process, there's quite a bit of testing that goes through. The biggest thing we're focusing on is payroll. You know, the thing that'll get people riled up the most is if your pay is incorrect appropriately. So they've done 2 required payroll parallels. They did a 3rd optional one, and they're doing a mini 4th payroll parallel just to make sure. I think they're going really well. Mapping.
What's the payroll parallel?
So it's basically taking actual payroll information from staff that we've been using our Oracle system, running that through Workday and looking at the result. And we find a lot of interesting things, some things that, you know, aren't correct in the current system that will be correct in the new system, different methods of rounding, and then sorting through those kind of things to identify if there's issues we actually need to solve. But we're at a really high rate.
Low rate of error.
Low rate of error.
Does this upgrade change anything on the public facing side? I noticed the other day I went in to pull some materials off of the city council.
They're not
site.
there anymore, are they?
No, they are, but you have to kind of,
That's a different thing.
it's a couple more bucks, so that's a different thing.
Yeah, it's a different
Okay.
software implementation.
Okay. Are there any public facing changes that'll come from?
Yeah, if you do business with the city, it's gonna look different. So if you're a
Okay.
vendor of the city,
Contractors or,
contractors, it's gonna look a lot better. There's like a supplier portal. There's a contract management portion, so some things are gonna get a lot better. But if you're just a resident, you don't
Yeah.
interact with the city in that way, and you're not gonna have an impact other than hopefully staff at some point have extra time to work on other stuff.
But if you're looking for a government job, it will be different too.
Yes, yeah, if you like our job board and stuff is gonna change. eventually.
Is this different than the software for the utility billing? Or is it, so is that a whole different?
Whole different system. The end result of the billing ends up in this system, so.
The end
All
result,
those
yes.
integrations are built out and tested.
That's a lot of software. That's trying to connect it all.
Yeah, I don't know the total integrations, but, yeah, the city has a lot of different software systems and they all mostly integrate with our kind of core.
It's a stress level, a little high.
A little bit, yeah, for certain areas, certainly for, finance and HR, especially now as we're rolling out training to supervisors and staff, how your time tracking is gonna look different. We're also implementing a new methodology of tracking time, paying down to the minute, which we haven't before. So some of the anxiety is from that methodology change, not the system.
So are supervisors or directors in a position to be able to sit down with staff that may feel like things have changed and have the opportunity to speak with them to make sure they understand?
That's the intent. I don't know, Brandon, what do you think?
What I think,
Do you
I think
feel
that there's-
educated?
I think there's a tremendous effort going out to manage the change that's happening in the organization to facilitate that. And then I think that there's it's a known quantity that there will be trepidation from
Yes.
some rank and file hourly employees as a new system is brought into being. We're gonna manage that as best we can.
Having been through the Workday transition myself, I found things like the frequently asked questions pages and videos helpful because I found that the majority of supervisors weren't as well read on it as HR was for implementation. And that just became apparent. Okay.
And we have a new thing called Workday Wednesdays. The supervisors are getting all together on Wednesdays and walking through the software and addressing questions. And there's always more questions than time. So we're working through it.
Good
We
luck.
have FAQs and videos.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the level of engagement though, right? Like the volume of the questions is really cool that people are feeling comfortable and having that opportunity this far out to really dig around and play with the system. It's pretty cool how engaged everybody is.
Well, that's good. Well, I know attaching the work tags to the different projects is pretty time consuming. So good luck.
That is time consuming. That's where a lot of the angst is
Yeah.
around, yeah.
I imagine so.
But it'll, on the other side, it'll give us great reporting capacity that we haven't had to this point, so it's gonna be really cool.
How will this impact external applicants for jobs versus internal?
I think it's all going through the same system.
Okay.
We're not gonna be on governmentjobs.com.
Yeah, so it'll all be transitioning to Workday.
Okay.
I don't think that's happening right away. I think there was a cutover schedule for HR. There'll be a blackout period where we're just not recruiting people.
Workday Wednesdays.
Mm-hmm.
What about troubleshooting Thursdays?
But troubleshooting every day.
Ooh, yeah.
Equal opportunity troubleshooting.
Thank you. Is this where people that are applying for boards and commissions will also be going through, or is that a whole different software program? Boards and commission?
That's the next bit to the part that Member Herron just pointed out. So the council software that is going to have, it's actually going to be really cool when it's all ready. So right now, when you are interested in, say, this committee, you have to try to dig around a little bit to find the committee.
Yeah.
So actually, the software system that hosts council meetings will also host all of the committee meetings. And so you'll be able to go to one spot to find agendas for a bunch of different boards and commissions. And then also it has a component that will help us manage the boards and commission volunteers. So there'll be one portal for submitting an application, and it'll all be in one place. That part's coming in. Yeah, that part's coming in a couple of bits more. Bits is a time.
Yeah, that was a good
Unit of time.
answer.
Like that.
In a bit.
Awesome. Anything else you want us to know?
I don't think so. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I don't think in your role it should have too much of an impact. But if you don't get an answer from the staff quite as quick after October 1st, you might know more.
Finance or HR specifically.
I think we should nickname it just Wyatt.
There you go. So October
Wyatt.
1st is launch day for the whole thing.
So time cards are September 21st, and then financials are October 1st.
Rather, the pre-existing system will be shut down.
So we'll still do a lot of data loads out of that even after October 1st, and then for reporting, we're still going to need it, through the next 2 years actually, as we try to close out the current fiscal year. But we're able to back off our licensing things for that system, and we'll close it out for most employees.
Yes. We got nothing. No continued business.